Hello everyone. Now, before we get to this video, I want to shout out BlitzApp, whose creators have very generously decided to support my YouTube channel. I know what you're thinking. The league's been out 10 years, you've got your own solution, the websites you go to. Blitz is different, and let me show you why. I recently cast a game where Tarzan popped off on Lee Sin. So, clicking on Lee Sin in the client, you'll notice that BlitzApp loads up Tarzan's rune page. Already, you're like, okay, this is nice, tell me more. BlitzApp is the only app that can auto-import Tarzan's rune set straight into the client. Loading into the client, you'll notice, opening up the shop, you got Blitz's suggested jungle item set, but there's more than that. These are recent pro builds loaded of very notable players. You can jump in and play Lee Sin like Tarzan does, and I hope this quick run-through shows you that BlitzApp's doing a little bit differently, and it's seamless and awesomely integrated. You can download the Blitz app at blitz.gg. Links are in the description below. Okay, the light mode is here. We're going to review TSM versus Cloud9, or Cloud9 on the blue side, so Cloud9 versus TSM for our first review of the night. And this should be an exciting one. My actual personal story for Cloud9 versus TSM is that I was awake when this game started, and it was super late Korean time, and I had the option of watching this live or watching the Overwatch League final live, and I was definitely wanting to watch this match live much more than the Overwatch League final, as I haven't watched Overwatch in a long time. But Achilles and Wolf, good friends of mine, and Achilles' former LCS caster, were doing their first final. And very quickly, the moment I saw a Rumble mid lane, I knew that this would be a very likely game to review. So I have not watched Cloud9 versus TSM, and thus you will get my honest reaction to it. So it was kind of one of those things where everybody won. Shout out again to Achilles and Wolf. They did a great job on the Overwatch League final. So, Cloud9, for some reason, this is a team that we review every week. And I think now it's pretty clear. Like, if you're going to use Occam's Razor, it's either that I've been paid off by Cloud9 and I'm secretly just reviewing their content as a type of advertising to them. If that's true, Jack, send the money over. I haven't received any money. Or it's that they, in general, are a very interesting team to watch. And I think of North American teams, Cloud9 to me has always been the most interesting team to follow ever since they came in and were just so good back in 2013 summer, like playing an LCK style in NA and just running rings around them macro-wise especially. But they always have a fairly interesting proactive early game style that I think leads to very watchable games. Like, I feel like you always know what you're going to get out of Cloud9, and while they can have their ups and downs in performance, they're always a very watchable team. And that makes them very interesting to track, and they just tend to have very, very entertaining games. So we're back with Cloud9 again. So we don't really need to go over specifics because we've talked about Cloud9 ad nauseum on this stream. One thing that we finally can do now is talk about Kumo versus Licorice a little bit, at least in terms of what the stats bear out and something we can look for. So I'm going to cue the viewers and also myself when it comes to the stream. So Kumo, 3 games on Jace, as you can see, 2-1, and then also the victory on Aatrox in this particular game. So 4 games final sample size. Then we have Licorice. What I want to show you guys is the difference between Licorice and Kumo's laning stats. Licorice, even though he's had, in my opinion, a lot more of a rough summer split, I think his laning phase, you can tell from the stats, has been strong. He's known as a fantastic laner and has grown into being very reliable at spreading those leads into team fights or playing out 1-3-1. Like, I think Licorice is a super player who should always be in the discussion as one of the best Western talents. However, I think his decision-making in games this split has been definitely a lot lower than I would expect for a player of his quality. And I think the kind of issues in terms of performance can definitely be linked to frustrations around amount of practice and his medical condition that he's managing and things like that. So you can still look at the numbers and say 7.8 CSD, all positive stats here. He's not feeding, he's not dominating, but he's having a strong laning phase, 75% ahead in CS at 15 minutes. Now that Kumo's played 4 games, do notice that we get a very different picture. Not ahead in CS, 3 out of 4 games. And look, the Aatrox one, understandable, but that does mean that he is only 1 out of 2 Jace games ahead in CS of 15 on a champion that we call in the LCK the 2 turret plate champion, because he, like Lux in the bot lane, almost guarantees a lane lead. Negative CSD, gold is basically even, XP differential's fine. Now these stats are not the beginning and the end of Kumo. This is not, hey, Kumo is worse than Licorice because his stats are lower. But if you look down and you're like, okay, what can I take away here that wouldn't just be lying? Because the bad use of stats is Licorice is a way better laner than Kumo by a lot. By the CS positive to negative, by 15.6 CS at 15 minutes. That would actually be a terrible way to use stats. Yes, it is in the stats. Those numbers are correct, but it's the wrong analysis around it. What the stats suggest to me, and kind of goes along with what I've watched, specifically last week's games, is that Licorice is a dominant top laner who often will probably need his jungler to guarantee his lead. He draws a lot of jungle attention. The game is a lot about Licorice, whereas from what I've seen from Kumo, very accomplished player in Challenger, but they mostly just kind of leave him on an island and have him do his thing. And his job is mostly, all right, let's get you some power in the lane, be relevant from it, whether it's, get some turret plates, hold the enemy laner down, or be ready to team fight. We're not going to throw a lot of resources your way. We're not heavily investing in the synergy between Svenskeren and Kumo, or Blabber and Kumo, because Kumo is kind of on a finite career length when it comes to starting for C9. Heavy expectation that Licorice will be coming in, imminently, next week, the week afterwards. I don't know what's been said publicly. So because of that, I think it's very much have him do his thing, and he'll do it honestly, but it's very hard to generate CS leads as a top laner that doesn't get a lot of resources reliably, without there being a whole lot of other game plan around it. So that's kind of the big thing there that I take away, is that he's been put in a role and he's been doing it reliably, but let's see how he's playing out these games. We won't get the best instinct from the Aatrox game here, in terms of the fact that obviously lane pressure there is going to be a minimum, so we'll see how much jungle attention there is. First participation at 50% is pretty good, right? But it's only 4 games, so it's pretty hard to read. That's what I'm going to look at the numbers and infer, is around how much jungle attention. And I've only watched 1 out of the 3 games closely, and I skimmed the other 2, so that's what I'm taking away there. It does change comms a lot, and I think that's the thing that's undeniable, is that Licorice is a very active talker on the team, and Kumo coming in is going to make things a little bit different. On the dive, they basically said that Kumo was getting a lot of help since C9 focused on helping out rookies when they play their first games. Okay, look, that's just, again, what I'm seeing from stats here. Fully understand I could be misplaced on this. I didn't see a lot of attention around topside when I reviewed last week's game, but that's kind of my read on this one, and I want to see what bears out in the game. So if all we get is a wrong hypothesis, we're learning something. What's your thoughts on Kumo having 3 Jace games? See, this is another interesting question. Let's get into the draft to understand that one. So when it comes to specifically the Jace games, I was actually very surprised C9 approached the draft in this game the way they did. So let's run through it. We got all our info here. No Kiana game here, but we've guaranteed a Kiana game this week. And this one is going to be a banger when we get to Kiana later, because she's a fun one. Mordekai's a disabled here. I think Karthus enabled? I forget. There's actually a lot of weird things going on when it comes to all the regions right now in terms of what's available and what's not. So let's get through the first round picks. All right. So some chatter in chat about how Kumo is being approached. I think the general consensus here is that C9 has been sending resources to the top lane and not getting a lot of inroads. So you're suggesting basically there that there's been games where they've invested a lot and he hasn't grown a huge CS lead. And there are games where he hasn't got as much resources and the CS numbers are there. So it goes against my original hypothesis. That suggests that they have taken a different leaf here, and we'll get to that in the second round. Focusing on the first round, Twisted Fate ban. Twisted Fate win rate actually huge in North America, and we should give a shout out here actually to a fun stat. Let's jump back to North American stat. There is actually something we need to talk about that I think not enough people are talking about. So, if you are on Games of Legends, you can look over champion lists, and you will see the win rate of a certain champion, and that champion is Jace. So, looking in at Jace win rate, NA Jace, one of the world's longest memes, 65% win rate, so still really strong. It was actually pretty good in spring, but up to 65%. So NA Jace performing, right? So already, you're pretty hyped about that. That's a good news story. That's true. However, it's in context even more impressive. 65% win rate for Jace, right? As you can see. Let's look over to their Rift rivals, buddy. 25% win rate on EU Jace. So actually, NA Jace is currently PogChamp, and that means that perhaps the new meme of EU Jace needs to be generated. I'm just putting it out there. EU Jace not doing so well. NA Jace doing real well. So, shout out to NA Jace. You worked really hard on leveling up over the years. It's been a long run, and it's been a rough one. Like NA Jace, you know, you and I did not see eye to eye for a long time, but you put in the work. You went back to the gym. You're nice and strong now. So big shout out to the thick boy NA Jace. No top lane bans here from TSM. 3 support bans. You know, obviously Sneaky is a big Sona player, so they ban away Sona Tahm Kench bot lane potential by banning Sona. In Korea, we see almost always the Tahm Kench ban because Tahm Kench first pick and you have the threat of Sivir and you have to draft around it, and they might not even play the threat of Sona, and then they might not even play Sona, and then you've just drafted safety on the right side in kind of worry of there being a Sona Tahm that's never coming. So just a straight up Sona ban, because Sona Taric is a lot more common in North America. The Karma ban, and look, support and top lane flex as we know, and then just Yuumi. So Lux does stick out as a priority support if you want to have lane presence bot lane. So very likely first pick. When it comes to Korea, Sejuani would not be first picked because you'd be afraid of the Silas answer here, so you wouldn't see as much priority on a first pick Sejuani. I think Lux is a pretty common pick in this particular scenario. Certain teams obviously first picking crazy stuff like Karthus and stuff at the moment. On the blue side bans, Azir ban ups the Corki priority a little bit, but Corki can also be a bait champion because we've seen it so much. Corki ban blue side into early Azir, or a responding Azir ban in the LCK, and yet Corki is not really as explored in other matchups, almost always Corki Azir. So leaving Corki open can lead to some interesting bait scenarios. We saw, for example, Veigar picked into Corki, which was pretty hype. But triple mid lane ban here from Cloud9. I feel like if you look at through history at what percentage of bans from Cloud9 versus TSM was sent at Bjergsen, it would be some ungodly number because of just, Bjergsen and his endearing quality. But, some things change. A lot of the nameplates around a player like Bjergsen and Sneaky change, but The bans definitely stay the same. So the Lux first pick, fine. Ends up being red side Tahm Kench and Tahm Kench Sejuani. I think the Sejuani choice here is perfectly fine if you have a plan around it. In Korea, Sejuani priority is higher because we see a lot of first round melee champions that actually give Sejuani ganking threat. If you take, say, Camille at this pick, you have a lane that can be camped, and it's a flex lane between mid and top side. If you don't take any melee laners, we're not expecting top lane Kench, the Sejuani power level actually plummets quite a lot. So I'm not a huge fan of just Sejuani taken as a power pick jungler on patch 9.13 for a couple of reasons. If you have synergies around it with the Camille or Fiora, then I don't mind it as a first round pick. Or if you invest bans into things like Sejuani, I don't mind it also. But given that it's just taken here ostensibly as strongest possible jungle pick in the first round, and there's no obvious synergies with it, when another ban round is going to come out, and potentially those laners, if you did respect them to come out, could be addressed. I'm not a huge fan of first round Sejuani without a plan. So that's kind of my thought there. Lux Sivir, it's been the duo lane that I've talked about so much in the LCK. Really powerful duo lane in most scenarios, but can potentially be turned around if Lux has to flash or if they're put on the back foot. And then Jarvan. And Jarvan priority has been rising quite a lot globally from his pick power. So the Jarvan jungle choice here could have been Sylas. So it's a little bit surprising, I guess, that with Svenskeren in the lineup, you get Jarvan. Svenskeren usually a lot more on point with his counter ganking and his pathing on C9 compared to Blabber, who's usually there for kind of outright aggression, and they kind of have to play around Blabber's aggression more than Blabber plays around lanes. But taking the Jarvan here suggests that Sven has a really specific plan on how he wants to play out the game, or they have second round draft picks that they really feel can play around the Jarvan. Because Jarvan is a really scary champion to consider, whether you're, normally a counter ganking jungler or a super aggressive jungler. So it is really interesting to think about why Jarvan there when Sylas is open. The big thing is reliable level 2, level 3 impact. So whether that has any ramifications this game or not, I don't know. I did not watch C9 versus TSM. Bans come through. Akali ban suggests they might want to play Yasuo, as Akali is really strong into Yasuo. It's also a Niski fallback champion, so that part's fine. Already one ban against the Sejuani. Remember, Aurelia could have been taken at this pick, but they didn't take it there. They focused on getting the duo lane strong, so you lose one of the most famous duo lanes with Sejuani. It feels like Camille and Aurelia are the two melee champions that have the best ability to get something out of this champ. And then you see a Veigar ban, which actually could be a Corki coverage ban. We talked about how when Corki Azir is removed, one of the champions to hold the Corki in check a bit that we actually reviewed last week was TL losing to Niski on the Veigar. So actually some pretty good bans here from TSM. So you could Yasuo here if you're TSM as late as last pick. We can probably increase the speed here a little bit. And then the Rumble Hover. And we know this ends up being a Rumble mid lane pick. But Rumble in this spot is very interesting. In terms of top lane, you almost always know this Rumble is not going to be top lane if you're C9. And you might wonder, okay, how do you know that Rumble isn't top lane, PapaSmithy? Is it because Bjergsen has been playing mid lane solo queue on Rumble or scrims? Like, did you hear a rumor about it? How do you know? It is actually a beard cam. How do you know that it's mid lane Rumble, most likely in this scenario, and not top lane Rumble? And we'll actually leave it open to chat here. Is there any reason why it's very likely that this is a mid lane Rumble at this pick right here? Because there's a reason that I see that's pretty clear, that the Rumble is going to be going mid. of course, it can still be flexed. Things can still happen from here. But let's see what we got here. Broken Blade never played it. 80 top for Sej. Doesn't Jarvan counter him top? Good call by D3SPOTSKI. Despotsky. Like Despacito, but Despotsky. Jarvan top is a top lane counter, and Mickey XD catches it as well. Jarvan top has been one of the most endearing top lane counter picks to Rumble. It was actually played this year by Soaz already in the matchup. So already it's very unlikely that you would pick Rumble when Jarvan isn't guaranteed to be in jungle, because it's already one answer, and you could draft another champion that splits against Rumble in really powerful fashion. So already you know that Rumble's not jungle because they already have Sejuani. Yes, there's a small chance that it's Sejuani lane, but you know, we have to cover all these things. But given the likelihood here, it is heavily expected to be mid lane. And some people in chat are spamming the win rates. 22% win rate Rumble LPL, 33% LEC, 30% LCS win rate. I'm also a big skeptic of Rumble because he can't lane against most champions, especially top lane, after 2 items. So many champions wreck Rumble in the 1v1 that putting your onus on, you better get that TP play around Drake at level 6. It's not like it was in 2015 or 2013 or 2014 where vision and teleport understanding hadn't evolved to where it is now. So often you don't get a chance to contest a Drake because the map has been put in a state by a team that really controlled both vision and the tempo of the way they're playing, minion waves, etc., to just make it so that Drake isn't something you can always contest. And there's other objectives on the map. Like before it was, well, you're going to come for Drake because there's nothing else to fight for. And kind of minion waves and TPs weren't perfectly coordinated. Now there's Rift Herald post 10 minutes. If you can delay the Drake, the warding and the control ward over the back of a pit has delayed Drake takes or made them lead to reverse plays on the map so much. You don't just teamfight. You can't just level 6 Rumble teamfight every time. And so Rumble doesn't get to fight when he's powerful, and teams are smarter at playing around windows of power than they ever were in past years. So I'm a pretty big skeptic of Rumble, but I actually think Rumble mid lane has some pretty amazing matchups that people don't know. In solo queue, if you're one of those people like me where if the enemy locks in Yasuo and you're playing mid lane, you're like, crap, why did I leave Yasuo open? Or why did my team ban Yasuo? I hate playing against Yasuo and Zed. If Yasuo comes out, Rumble Ignite with mid smashes Yasuo in the early game and in a big, big way. So there's a free piece of freelo for you guys to know. Doesn't require a lot of mechanics either, as you know, with your PapaSmithy champions. But yeah, the Rumble here is an interesting one to evaluate. And it is one that I think C9 would have had extra info that they could have expected it in the mid lane. So how do they respond from here? They need both solo lanes. Remember that Jace is open, and Jace does pretty well against Rumble. Some people try to play Rumble into Jace and just either need jungle help or can get a sick outplay, but I think with Phase Rush, Jace has no worries against Rumble whatsoever and easy to push him in. The Jace is open, and they could easily go Jace and an AP mid laner, and instead they go Aatrox and Vladimir. So around the comp they have, you can make a lot of decisions in 2019 summer about how to play around Lux, Sivir, Jarvan. Like, Sivir and Jarvan, really, really good at team fighting. So usually in the past, this would be the Rumble comp, and you'd just be a team fight only comp, no range. But Lux support gives Sivir a lot of lane presence. You go from being farming support that couldn't get through a lot of harder lanes into potential for one shot with the right binding from the brush, and also often getting turret plates because Sivir does turret damage but not doesn't have the range to siege. But Lux has so much immense range and a lot of supports can't function against her that Lux has enough lane presence that Sivir gets to walk up and she can do the damage like we mentioned, and you actually get turret plates as well. So it's kind of a new god tier duo in similar ways to Kalista Thresh and Kalista Rakan in the past and Lucian Braum. Like, it is really a super powerful duo when it comes to what it's able to achieve. So you kind of can pivot into Siege if you want here, even though Sivir doesn't usually fit with a Siege comp. In the end, they go full team fight, Vladimir and Aatrox with the potential of flexing them, but we know that Vladimir ends up going to the mid lane, and then Aatrox. So they don't go Jace here. Jace actually fits the theme because Lux support exists, but if Lux support didn't exist, like if it was, say, a Taric into Tahm Kench, then the Jace would be very much, well, I'm trying to get lane presence and bridge you into the team fight coming online, but I don't exist as a frontliner. So kind of interesting that they had a lot of different ways to pivot here. And it's the first time they don't pick the Jace for Kuma. They could just have gone for, this champion's generally strong. His stats don't look fantastic, but he can get through it one way or the other. And the Jace actually ends up going the way of TSM. Very classic lane into Aatrox where you're going to get a big lane lead. Rumble can lane into Aatrox, but it's not a fantastic matchup, and just like almost all of them, you get outscaled. In the early game, you get to punish him pretty hard, but I think that Rumble can get stuffed by the Infernal Chains as a melee champion a lot more than Jace ever will be, so I think it's, in general, the payoff is not there to actually run Rumble into Aatrox, but you can definitely understand people trying it and trying to get like a snowball gank or something like that. So now you have a self-sufficient top laner that can do a lot of work against Aatrox. You have two lanes you can gank for as Sedge, but neither of them are leaping off the page synergy lanes. Like, you can gank the Rumble. He may be a melee champion, but he doesn't auto-attack that much, so he doesn't stack up the permafrost on his side very much. And Rumble mid is very, very different to Rumble top in terms of how you play out lanes. Meanwhile, Jace can go into melee range and function as a pseudo Akali or Aurelia. So I guess in this case, Aurelia or Fiora with or Camille with a lot of ability to stack up the permafrost, but it isn't quite as crazy as something like Camille for sure. So given that, we do see that Sejuani gets at least one lane you can consider playing around, but neither of them are the sort of lanes we see first rounded in the LCK very frequently. Bot lane is really a lot about levels. Level 1 really desperately poor for the Varus Tahm Kench, but this is the most I saw. I saw this draft and I said this could be a potentially interesting game. I know there's a lot of swings here, so C9 versus TSM. Let's learn it. Let's understand it. Who won draft in your opinion? That's a good question to open up with. I would say that C9's comp is pretty much a teamfight god comp if they have vision control in the game. The moment that C9 get to decide when fights start, their team comp is one of the best possible in the late game. Hemoplague has great synergy with the Aatrox. The Jarvan can just R in, then EQ out, and occupy space, and Sivir needs no introduction. So deathly strong teamfight comp. TSM's comp is a comp about timings. If you can especially get a lead bot lane, if you get a successful gank onto Zazel, put him behind, and the lane presence goes down, you can have 3 hard winning lanes in the early game, and then turret dives for free around Arcadian. So I would expect that TSM get a big objective snowball with this comp. I noticed that it's Comet on the Varus, so they are trying to dunk the 2v2 here. Comet Rumble a lot more standard. Rumble's roam potential is what is unique about him in mid lane. He actually roams better than almost any other mage without having to use teleport from the mid lane. Like, you can think of other mages in the mid lane, like Ahri is a great roamer, right, and things like that. Rumble's ability to either show up behind and actually be a threat that way, or equalizer from very far away, makes him a really supremely strong roamer, and he can actually push waves pretty decently. So there's actually a lot of power in this Rumble draft, and if all 3 lanes are winning and shoving, and you definitely win hard against Vlad in trades pre-9, maybe even pre-2 items, I think TSM basically wins this game in 25 minutes or almost always loses unless they get a Barren buff. So I think both teams have a lot to like about them. I don't think there's a clear winner or loser here. Like, I really like TSM's draft. They say they wanted to play proactive. They showed the Gragas Yasuo before in the bot lane. This is a proactive draft, and Arcadian is definitely the more proactive from my viewing of the two junglers. So at the end of the day, I really like both drafts. I just think that TSM have more control over their own destiny. They can potentially get a really big gold lead in this game, and in the meta as it stands in 2019, especially when you don't have perma wave clear mid laners like Azir versus Corki, getting an early game lead is still the best way to win. So I guess I favor TSM's draft, but it's the sort of draft from C9 that if TSM make a big mistake in the mid game, like coming back is much easier for this C9 comp than most comps. Level 1 wards are pretty shallow between the two teams. Now, one of the reasons, let's watch how the lanes start in the bot lane. So you don't want to do a late invade as TSM. You desperately want to get to bot lane as safe as possible on the Varus Tom and get an even laning phase and make sure you don't lose out in the early phase. And actually, it ends up being a leash for both junglers. So that part is fine. Shallow wards for both. No ward ahead of the river. Which is probably fine, all things considered. And let's watch the mid lane Rumble. So Rumble is a champion very near and dear to my heart. When I lived in Australia, I had a corgi named Rumble, named after the League of Legends champ. It's probably the champion I'm best at. I'm bad at the game, so it doesn't mean that much with these things. But at the end of the day, it's a champion I know a lot about, so I really enjoy watching it. I don't think I've cast a Rumble mid lane game since I cast Faker's Rumble mid lane game with Blank, and I was heavily critical of how Faker and Blank played out that game. Faker and Blank were on different wavelengths. The way you play Rumble mid is you hard roam with your jungler because you do so much damage as early as this. So it's a really nice roam timing here, but good counter gank coming through from Svenskeren. This is really cool. Let's watch the play as it develops. So they don't know which side of the jungle that Svenskeren started on. They assume it's bot side because bot lane came in after a leash. So there's a very real chance he's top side at the moment, and Jace has been slowly pushing in a wave. If you watch top side, this is the play we're talking about, where Jace, if you watch top lane, is trying to push in with a really big wave and then mid lane roam. So it doesn't take a genius to understand that a turret dive is being threatened here, but it's a really good look from TSM to be looking for turret dives this early with Rumble mid. Post 6 is obvious, but level 3, you saw the shove Rumble has. He comes in, Svenskeren clears a camp, and then is just there for the counter gank. And while they actually do get Summoner here, so they get Bjergsen's flash. I didn't see this. Yeah, he has to flash away from the EQ that comes in from Svenskeren. So they get a trade of Summoners. They actually trade up. They get 3 Summoners for 2 overall. Good call from Svenskeren to counter gank there. He's been like the player that I really shout out as one of the most impressive players from North America this split. He's been really good at being in the right spot. What is Niski doing? So the vision misses. Let's watch it from here. So Niski takes a really weird path in that case. So he wants to help with the warding. Remember that Svenskeren doesn't actually spot out the Sejuani there. And then Niski takes a path where he's very likely to find allies. They have no priority in the jungle. Like Svenskeren had already started walking away here. That's the last area that TSM was seen in. He should go straight down. After he wards here, he should go straight down and go the safest possible way. Instead, he kind of just gives up both summoners for free. He actually ghosts here as well. Wow, okay. It's a really strange one. If you're wondering why there's no follow-up here. We can watch the replay. They don't know that Niski doesn't have pool available, so that's why they don't flash after it. And we know that pool would have been just available towards the end there. So that's why there's no follow flash that comes in. Permafrost is already on cooldown. They're afraid that he's just going to bait them with the pool and they won't get the kill. So Arcadian holds onto his flash, probably expecting that he'll find an ability to gank a lane with flash still up. Why did he not W that Sedge stun? He didn't have W up is the reason he didn't W it. So I think that probably surprised Arcadian. He's like, well, he must be holding W for a reason. Let's just get the confirmation here. I'll show you guys. Niski's level 4. His W's on cooldown for 4 seconds. That's the reason he didn't use it. Where did he use it then? I believe on the wave for pushing. So it might have been caught by TSM. It might not have been. I can't tell that part, but it was on cooldown, so he definitely used it. He didn't use it in the escape, as we saw. It's got a very long cooldown, about 20-second cooldown. There is a chance that if you're trying to counter push and put down a ward, you would actually use the pull for wave clear as Vladimir. Rumble has a lot more shove than you in the early game. Takes a lot longer for Vlad to have the wave clears remembered for till much later in the game. So, very big possibility to use that there. This is kind of the best case for Vlad, is trying to freeze under the turret, and even then Rumble can, without aggro, push in the wave. So, we talk so much about champions like Aurelia and Yasuo and mid laners, and I want to show this clip for a reason. This lane state here, where the turret's not aggroing all the minions and pushing it back, and the lane phase is pretty frozen. If this is not Vladimir, if this is Aurelia or Zed or Camille or Yasuo, any melee champion that has a lot of all-in potential, we always talk about how this is the god tier lane positioning for those champs to have the lane in, because you're going to have to overextend to try to push it, and if that happens, you're either going to take turret aggro, you're going to be ganked and not be able to reset. This is a lane position that actually Rumble can function against better than most champions you would imagine, because as early as level 4, you can push the wave from being positioned here. You have a cone ability that doesn't cost resources, and you can both harass and push in at least the melee minions in order to start the turret being aggroed onto the wave, to start pushing it back. So yeah, Rumble in those matchups, and we talked already about how he's a very good counter to Yasuo in the mid lane, actually can interact with minion waves that are frozen here a lot better than a lot of other mid lane champions can in the meta right now. So kind of like an interesting like side tangent on a very common meta trend. So many of the kills on the LCK and looking around to other regions have been minion wave frozen, someone trying to stop the freeze, and champion coming in for a gank timing because of good communication between a mid laner and their jungler. Rumble's ability to unfreeze there is actually a pretty cool side thing about him. Like, he doesn't seem concerned at all about how he's playing out this wave, but Bjergsen's also playing to top side because he knows that Jarvan's likely to be bot side of the map. People asked about lethality Varus. You go lethality Varus to win lane against Silverlux. If you think about the last time that we saw lethality Varus from Sven, I believe it was against Morgana support. But champions like Morgana and Lux with huge lane presence and the ability to shrug off trades, they get heavily outranged by QMax Comet Varus going lethality. So you go this build to win lane. And as we mentioned, this is very much a win lane, win game draft from TSM about sieging and taking a 20 to 25 minute Barren. And it's team fighting from C9. So I actually like Sven going all in with his teammates on a very aggressive Varus choice. Good point in chat. It is also red side Varus, and red side Varus can basically delay games forever around Barren or out a mid lane turret. So of the sides to go lethality Varus, because red side have a natural defense around the terrain around Barren, actually Varus is better red side as lethality than blue side as lethality. Not enough that you wouldn't even consider it blue side, but it is a cool thing to mention. So it's pushed lane, pushed lane, pushed lane. Bjergsen now 6. Because Sejuani wasn't picked with these champions that has really strong gank synergy with, they have to make their plays happen. Otherwise, things like this where you pause the game, 11 CS lead here, it's not enough where this game is going to be huge outscale as it goes on. 5 CS odd in mid lane, not enough of a lead given where the game is going. Onus on TSM to get more. This sort of a comp actually would be very out of meta in 2018 because often the enemy would move away, you would get a couple autos in, these two champions wasted their time, you get like 3 CS advantage from making this roam. However, in 2019 with turret plates, there's gold to be had here. You can get a kill's worth of impact without even getting an enemy flash if you make these plays. And that's why I like TSM's comp for the current patch. Because with the turret play system as it is, that's why plays like this are the correct move, because you're always going to get at least half a kill's worth of gold when you have Jace with a grouped minion wave pushing in and the enemy top laner having to go away. Whereas previously, that gold just didn't exist in the game because there weren't turret plates. So while the gank isn't caught because this control ward is probably like, I imagine like just the corner of vision would have caught it there. Like, this is actually a really good ward here, so props to C9. That's a ward you should copy because it deals with the pixel brush control ward and still catches the roam. But the gank is still going to get, you know, either a turret play or basically standing gold that will be confirmed future. Yeah, we can see the turret play not quite confirmed, but these are the roams you have to make with the Rumble mid. You have to get in there. You have to get the side lanes. You have to get ahead. So right now, CS for CS in every lane except top, no. You don't love the approach TSM's taken, but it can turn on at level 6, right? You got level 6s in multiple lanes. They made it a bit harder for themselves because they didn't just go, say, Camille mid lane and Jace top lane. So it's just what will the coordination with Arcadian look like? The first 2 were good. You know, neither of them got a kill. But the first 2 roams around the Rumble have been promising. And already I like Bjergsen on this mid lane Rumble, roaming around and threatening a lot more than Faker, who did a lot of farming on this pick. And the build is very much around pushing and roaming because it's boots 2 mobility and blasting 1, which is your strongest pickup for pushing because it's flat ability power. Really like TSM playing the super aggro early game route here. It does feel like shoe on the other foot, right? Usually it's C9 on the early game comp and TSM on the scaling, but with that reverse, it's kind of cool to see TSM making the positive moves. You love seeing Infernal when you picked Lethality Varus and 3 winning lanes in the early game, and they were able to find, hey, another ward. Love the ward spots here. Good job from C9. You want to find all the inroads you can when you're going for a comp like this. And C9, in terms of losing the maximum, you know, you want to lose the minimum, sorry, in a game like this. It's 1,000 gold. Bjergsen's roaming again. This is cool. Getting Niski's TP out of it. Nice roam from Bjergsen. He can come back in mid lane and just push it up. Really good shove, as you can see, with just a blasting wand and boots 2. This is a cool game from TSM. They haven't been able to find a meaningful lead enough from it, but the way they've played it, I think, has been really good. It feels like Arcadian, maybe they should be making bot lane plays here. Like, that might be more reliable. But I guess Chains of Corruption is only now available. From now on, maybe you just go bot lane a bit more because you rely on Jace with Dirk and Grievous Wounds to be able to just manufacture his own leads. So I take that back. I actually like top lane focus into waiting for kind of Chains of Corruption to be up in order to play bot side. Interesting game so far. So from here, standard lane breaks. Yomu's Ghostblade straight up rush, so you have crazy amounts of lane power in Sven's lane from Sven's side compared to Sivir, who just has trying to wave clear with as much AD and Berserker Greaves at this point. Very easy for Bjergsen to contest the vision that was created topside because he's Rumble. Equalizer available off cooldown. Showing topside already. This is the sort of travel time where he could be top. And consider also Svenskaren's time, because he's had to spend so much time. Every time Rumble leaves mid lane and clears a control ward, Svenskaren has to be top for the counter game, has to baby a top laner who doesn't have the ability to fend for himself in the 1v1 and might be being dove. And he has to do this consistently. It does mean that he has no ability to try to gank mid lane or gank bot lane. All of Svenskaren's time has been spent trying to counter gank. That's the reality when you draft a scaling draft like this. And it's cool to see Svenskaren in the right position, playing a bit of a different game because he's even more counter gank focused in this particular game than he has been in recent series. Like, he hasn't been trying to predict plays as much. He's been trying to respond to lane pressure and respond to roams. He's doing that just fine, but it does mean that he doesn't have the ability to impact the map the way he wants at all. All he can do is stem the bleeding of what is already 3 turret plates in the top side. He doesn't see the enemy on wards, so he knows to walk up to the Rift Herald. Really good patience from Bjergsen to hold the that's a lot of damage with the W, to hold the equalizer there. This is really well done by TSM. Let's talk about the play as it happens. So the reason this play happens is when Rumble had gone, cleared out a ward, and backed away, and never went top, and Sejuani never showed top, Svenskaren says, okay, probably on Rift Herald. So let's consider the context in which this Rift Herald is being taken. It's being soloed by Arcadian. He's decent at taking Rift Herald. He has, has the monster maximum health damage and is pretty tanky. Already has quite a lot towards the Cinderhulk. But it's not going to be super fast. And then see what's coming. So Lux is on the way. Tahm Kench also on the way. Not sure if Tahm Kench ever showed on Vision. But this Drake is going to be serrated Dirk Jace walking over. Rumble with Magic Pen and first rotation from mid coming over. Compared to some of a Banshee Veil and Ninja Tabi Ruby Crystal. And if the bot laners ever get there, remember Sneaky has TP and Sven does not. Yomu's Ghostblade done compared to just the constituent parts, and Sneaky needs to clear out a minion wave before he can join. So TSM have a lot more immediate power. Comet Varus with 4 points in Q, Equalizer up. So it's actually a super risky team fight for C9 to take, and they're just too bold. They don't have the priority to make this play. They don't respect the fact that Sven might just be walking up. You just see how much damage TSM take here. This is the dream. This is the coaches from TSM. You know, Zix is sitting in the back going like, we did it. We drafted perfectly, because they get a huge lead around this. They get Rift Herald and also multiple kills and also the turret plates because of the timer here. No. Why? Why would you do this? Why? 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 Oh no. Why would you do this? Holy moly! Damn it. Why? Because this is like, if you pause the game here, and you're like, PapaSmithy, How many times does TSM win this game after that play just happened? I would say that even what is that percentage chance of winning? It's like 85 to 90%. Even with the insane scaling here, TSM really got everything. They got all of the things. They should have, at the end of this play, either 2 completed turrets full of plates, i.e. 10 plates, or 9 plates, because the charge, of course, after a couple of autos is going to get 2 plates guaranteed. They're going to get all of top lane turret. The Jace can go there. They got the Rift Herald. Like, they literally got everything. The list of things they got here, multiple kills and Rift Herald and 2 turrets full of plates, is outrageous. That's so much advantage. And then the only option you have at C9 is fighting against souped up Rumble, souped up Jace, and 2 lethality items Varus. Instead, it's actually a tragedy. Do we get Bjergsen's reaction to this? I need to see. Bjergsen seems bemused. He doesn't move his model here for a reason. But, yeah. Like, they should have got everything here. And it's actually super costly to not get the mid lane turret there. For the mid lane turret to have 3 plates after C9 made that much of an overreach, it's the difference between a 5k gold lead potential and a smaller gold lead potential in the mid game. We watch the replay here. This is just TSM actually playing C9 like a fiddle. Teams very often will take scaling teamfight comps and forget that they don't have the scaling and remember that they have the teamfight. That's what we see here from C9 is they're like, we can fight because they have teamfight abilities, as everyone knows, like Hemoplague, Cataclysm, Aatrox resets. But if you don't have your items, you actually don't have those things. You've got to put them out of your mind until you earn the right to say, no, we really are a teamfight comp. Look at our items. So TSM smash and grab should have made this like an insanely massive goal lead. It's still 4,300, which is huge. But it could have been 6, 7, 8,000 and should have been. Like this turret should not exist here. And the gold lead would have been bigger in multiple lanes. Cool play. Plays like this are really interesting to evaluate. Like we'll start the play a little bit further back. Because again, you look at these players and you see why they happen. Rumble, very early able to get out of mid lane and robe down. This is actually a pretty good dive from Arcadian. I like the aggressiveness of this play. Like Smoothie has to give up his whole health bar to make it happen. But Vlad is always going to take an age to get there. They get flash out. They're able to kill off the first kill there. The equalizer could have been deeper, but it doesn't really matter. And TSM still fighting when the item difference is ridiculous. Look at the difference in items here. Magic double pen versus nothing. Yomu's versus a bit of flat AD. Like Sivir only does auto Q, maybe a ricochet, and then she's kind of out of damage, right? She has no crit modifier. She has no attack speed in the build apart from Berserk Greaves. Like this is a huge power window for TSM to continue to flex. So you do go for dives with this comp. It's actually incorrect not to go for turret dives with this comp with how much outscale there is and the fact that you're always roaming first. So good play overall from TSM. Yes, Bjergsen dies. It's not perfect. It should be with a bigger gold lead behind it. But they need to keep making plays like this. That's the exact approach you want to see from the side of TSM. And given the people that are recalling, you're going to walk up freshly shopped as well. Yeah, Sneaky. That's one of the frustrating things about facing lethality Varus is you actually don't have your spell shield up most of the time, given that you want to decrease 500 damage all-ins, or 500 damage trades with spell shield. Like, the right time to spell shield's never perfect. Ideally, the equalizer would have been a bit deeper here, but it's pretty decent from Bjergsen. And they're straight back to it. Good to see. Infernal Drake is spawned. TSM have pretty short cooldown ultimates. Equalizer will be back really soon. Like, this is the pace you need to play at here. So while TSM hasn't been flawless, I'm happy to see that they're not drafting Rumble mid and farming like we saw with SKT trying a similar strategy last year. That they at least seem to understand their win conditions here, which is good to see. Kuma's teleport is down. Ah, good catch by Azale. So you really do want to take this, but they don't have Smite on Arcadian or Smoothie, so they have to back away. That's a frustrating one. It's a bit of a tilter. Not as much of a tilter as the Rift Herald interrupt. Like, because this should be, in almost any case, a Infernal Drake to TSM. But they can just shove the minion wave and try it again. You have a lot of minion wave control as both these AD carries. Double Dirk, Jace, double Dirk Varus, and Morello Nomicon finished Rumble. Broken Blade gets out. Pretty simple. I think it was chilling Smite in the fight, to be clear. It's not worth rewinding as to why he doesn't have the Smite there. But Equalizer's back up. C9, every time they continue to contest here, is so risky. I would much prefer them sending 3 people mid lane and trying to push the turret in than trying to contest. This is too hard. Okay, well, that fell too low. 35 health. Ooh. Not the best smite there from Arcadian. You have so much control over the pit that I think you always wait longer for the smite there. Still 5,000 gold. This is such a what it could have been. The mid lane turret should have been dead. So a lot of the plays that have happened here, for example, this play. Consider how different these plays are when you look at things like minion waves, right? Because consider that all these plays around Drake are different if mid lane turret is down. If mid lane turret is down, there's a lane ward here, Sivir's hanging back a little bit longer. Lanes aren't being shoved as much. In general, Drake gets pretty much indefensible from behind if you lose mid lane outer. And mid lane outer should be dead at this point. The Rift Herald should have been able to go through. It was just a lazy Rift Herald positioning from Arcadian that leads to mid lane outer turret still being up. Things like the amount of time that it takes to take down the Infernal Drake. All of this happens more decisively if mid lane turret is down. Like, yes, they still get Infernal. Some old Smiths. Doesn't really matter. But the play happens faster, and therefore TSM's back on the map with their item lead a lot faster if mid lane turret is down. So at the end of the day, the end result in this immediate case is the same. They still get the Infernal, but it's always important to remember what should have been in a game like this. Not what could have been, what should have been, because it was just a straight up unforced mistake coming through from Arcadian. Still overall do appreciate how aggressive he is with the dives. When I've reviewed Grig, he's been pretty much passive. So it does play into that active playstyle, and definitely Arcadian is, of the two junglers, the one that seems to fit that one a little bit better. TSM continue to want to get a Vision Stranglehold. Thing you want to do around 18 minutes is to transfer your Drake wards into Barren wards, but I think for now, spotting around a Varus Siege is fine. Lux actually provides very little against Comet Varus, because you can play around the mind games of the shield timings a lot more reliably. And obviously the Aftershock provides nothing against Varus because he outranges you. So usually you would see Guardian taken against a Tahm Kench lane in general, or maybe Unsealed Spellbook. So the Aftershock here is actually a bit weird. I'm actually not sure why Zeyzal went Aftershock in this game, because I mean, maybe you're hitting a binding on Sej, but there's no one in lane that you're going to be all-in'd by. And it's not an all-in comp from TSM. It's an outrange comp that mostly focuses on sieging, whether it's Comet Varus or Lethal Tempo Varus. Good structure from TSM. They're threatening from different sides. They know they can walk up. They have multiple people that do turret damage, so able to zone away from turret. They finally get out a mid lane turret at 17 minutes. Continue to push up as a team is how you play a draft like this from TSM. And I think outside of one mistake, they've played it really well. Sven trying to predict Flash, I guess. Yeah. He tries to predict Flash, and Niski doesn't Flash. The next level, next level. The R hit early. Equalizer to zone off the wave. They got the outer turret. So, if you're going to pick win lane, win game, you want to take 3 outer turrets first, right? And they do. They have 3 outer turrets. Right now, I believe C9 is only getting their first turret as Kuma works on it. You're ahead 5 kills. You're ahead 6,500 gold. This has been overall a really strong early game for TSM, as people in the chat. That's a really big combat text, isn't it? This is like something out of Borderlands on a 50-inch screen. Cool. We'll leave it there for now. But this is what you want from TSM. Yes, Rift Herald, but everything else, they've taken every objective in the early game, apart from some Rift Scuttlers. They've taken down 3 outer turrets. They're fighting when their champions are at their strongest possible spike, and no one has a spike yet on the side of C9. But a lot of this game is going to be won and lost between 20 to 25, as we outlined. And that's what, we're going to inspect closest here, because we're getting closer and closer to the point where Bjergsen has no good lane to go to. 1v1. Why does Bjergsen stay? I guess he just assumes there was a full reset. Civilux is showing on a ward. It's just a little bit lazy from Bjergsen. Maybe he was talking about the next play that was supposed to happen there. Ignite Rumble being that far up is a bit strange, pushing one more wave. I guess it must have been the one more wave item thing, but not ideal from Bjerg. Against no magic resist, you do so much damage here with Haunting Guys. Like true damage from from double pen plus the Madness passive, or whatever it's called, on Haunting Guys, actually insane equalizer damage, and also ticking a flame spitter damage. No safety though. Like, I guess he has a stopwatch live, so it's probably fine, but definitely the focus for Bjergsen here is on getting things done soon. So where's the turning point? Because right now TSM, they're pushing down Deep Vision, they're prepping for their next objective. Seems to be Mountain Drake rather than trying to rush a Barren. Their Barren damage isn't massive. Without Liandry's, Rumble doesn't do a lot of Barren damage. Their Barren turn is strong, and their Jace is unanswerable in a side lane, so they've got that going for him. Very rare that Jace is able to build Executioner's Calling against Aatrox and get huge value out of it against Vladimir as well, but that part is true. Carrying in a minion wave they prepped earlier. This is really strong. Really good play here. They invade for vision to allow Bjergsen to push in the side lane. Smoothie walks up. Kumo takes one aggressive trade, but doesn't understand how little priority his team has. And it's a good ultimate from Sven. Yeah, Aatrox has no business pushing up there trying to wave clear with Q and dies, as he should. Impressive again from TSM. TSM do lose this game, right? C9 can only enter their blue side jungle and try to defend Barren. Abyssal Voyage to mid lane. At 20 minutes 41, like, I would give this TSM early game S-. And if you take away the Rift Herald botch, which was just purely Arcadian, kind of being a bit of an airhead, making a bit of a silly mistake, it'd be almost, S to S plus. Like, they played it really, really well in terms of where they put their vision, in terms of how aggressively they've roamed from mid. Like, it's a comp that can always lose because one wrong team fight, the gold lead getting to like 3,000, like a 3,000 gold disadvantage for C9 at 28 minutes, they're actually going to win team fights pretty reliably because of the comps here. But TSM have played ideally. The only threat is outscale, and if they play out the rest of the game like they played out the previous parts, the outscale never happens. The outscale is 45,000 gold on C9, and they've outscaled. 40,000 gold, and they'll fancy a good team fight if they can force out some summoners. But 30,000 gold, the outscale is still far away for the side of C9. Double Barren Mountain, so now TSM even do a decent Barren. It's still slow. You forget how slow Varus's Barren taking is when he has no attack speed in the build. You can't get the Varus passive that you even have in the laning phase when you're doing Barren because you're not killing a minion in order to get the Varus passive. So you do Barren buff way slower, and you play so many games as on-hit Varus and so few games as lethality Varus when you're prepping that I think it's very difficult for an AD carry to communicate how slow you do Barren, because it's even slower than when you're trying to auto-attack minions in lane because you don't have that Varus passive. Broken Blade's got really good control wards to split around as they're making it about the Baron because Broken Blade has TP. He's roaming up. The roam up here is a little bit lower value unless you're going to start Baron, because usually you roam up to take an inner turret. But they just want to push minion wave in mid, so TSM still playing this out smartly. In terms of vision, there's one really good ward they've been replacing around this area that could be a flank ward. Kumo has a lot of CDR, so he could look for a teleport flank. Niski doesn't have Unsealed Spellbook teleport right now, but he could look for a flank. Sivir finally has the minimum of items to do some damage, but even then does not as much damage unless they can burst down one member. So TSM still doing exactly what they want to do on the map. Question mark ping on a very standard flank ward spot, the sort of thing that Licorice would punish them on in the past. Okay, let's watch this then. So far so good. They're walking up. Walking up with pressure, clearing out a control ward. You know mid lane's rotating over. What happens next? Binding hits on Sedge. She doesn't walk up. Harassment goes down on Zeyzal. He's out of the fight. So the first issue that happens here, you'll notice, is that Bjergsen's focusing on where to put the equalizer and not the fact that Sven is around. So he actually equalizers to zone away C9 from contesting the turret. Like, that's not a combat equalizer. That's a zone C9 away from fighting equalizer when C9 are about to make the fight happen. Like, you never equalizer here for anything other than you want melee champions to walk up and auto. Arcadian, Broken Blade, they're all walking into close range just to go on the turret. But the game changes quickly here because Svenskeren's decisive in his face and engages when Bjergsen has used basically his most meaningful cooldown in order to zone away from the fight. So that's actually a breakdown in concentration and communication from TSM. Not everyone is in position to... Everyone's in position to take down the turret, and that's clearly the call they make. But the rest of the team quickly realizes they have to disengage because they can't team fight under a turret. They need to poke with Jace Varus in order to do damage if Equalizer is going to miss consistently. Their most consistent damage ability is Equalizer. Like, that's their highest consistent damage champion. It's not Varus in a true 5v5. It's not Jace. It's Rumble right now. But Rumble Equalizer was used for a different means, and it means they don't get anything there. They lose one member. Okay. Does he show himself here? So Arcadian walks up. Does he actually go out of the brush? He does. Not sure what the vision's like there, but it doesn't really matter, right? He's going to get banged by 4 people. There's definitely a mistake from Niski. Jace can still go bot lane. You still put down some vision around here in order to push up again. Overforced by TSM where they misread that C9 was willing to walk up and engage, and specifically Bjergsen got no value out of the Rumble they desperately needed to find value. Like, if you watch this replay, like, there's no way Bjergsen considered there could be a team fight engage here. This is a zone off ultimate, and instead the fight doesn't happen around where the equalizers. And the equalizers were very good before this. 1 kill goes down, it ends up getting traded. It relieves some pressure from C9, so it gets them closer to the 40,000 gold we were talking about. So anything like that, where it goes 1-for-1, is a win C9, because they're trying to buy time for scaling. Speaking of scaling, they have double TP up. So Vladimir flanked teleport here with sneaky half health. Let's consider why this was called. Smoothie flashed and healed. Flashed down on Sven, so they're trying to play forward. Sejuani has everything up, but they're basically trying to force a team fight. So this is a really cool TP spot from Niski. It would be more ideal to have Aatrox coming from back because he has more CC, but Niski has Spellbinder for a bit of burst. This is a risky call from C9, but they've got EQ, Flash, and also the Vladimir. This is a really good call by C9. It's so risky to do this play, but let's talk about why. So let's pause when the TP is being channeled. The call is now and the TP is channeled. So why does C9 make the play? But PapaSmithy, you said 40,000 gold required to be team fight ready. And you're not wrong on that. Like, they're definitely a little bit on the anemic side. No 2-item on Vladimir. No attack speed out of boots on the side of the Sivir. But what do they have? Bjergsen has just hit a wave on top side. He has no teleport. He can't respond to the play. Jace, if he goes bot lane against Aatrox, has super duper items for just slamming down. He can siege, he can 1v1. So there's no way for this person to enter lane against this person. And if they group under TSM's jurisdiction under an objective, if TSM comes to siege and Aatrox comes in second, well, this guy is the god of sieging, and this guy's going to get chunked out trying to come from the front. So he can only really exist as a champion in a teleport flanking scenario. That's all he can do here is teleport flank. He can't lane and he can't wave clear. So actually, this teleport play is super smart from C9, because if they don't do something, if they just say, hey guys, we're going to farm, Aatrox will lose his inner turret. This gets a longer lane, and thus Barren threat from a TP flank is higher. They are very likely to lose the Barren because TSM can very easily take Barren control the moment that Rumble pushes out a wave. This is a timing where they can guaranteed outnumber when Rumble can't get there. Broken Blade is likely to be a little bit slower on the TP given how decisive a TP this is. And credit to Sneaky and Zaza for pulling the trigger even after Sneaky was engaged on. Because the high roll of making this play work, of getting a couple of kills, is maybe stealing a Barren, and a Barren buys you enough time to get to the gold values you need in order to win team fights. So this is a really good shot call here. I don't know if anyone has spoken publicly about who called for this, but this is a really good attempt from C9 because there was so much negativity on the map for them if they didn't make a play, that making a play actually bails them out of a game where they had no control over how it was being played. So with the summoners down, with the approach in the game they were on, this was a really, really intelligent play on the engage here. And you don't even care that Jace is going to push down a turret because if Aatrox was there, he was going to do that anyway. Let's watch this replay. Damn. Let's approach this from the side of TSM. So we'll pause now. So we're 2450 in. C9 has all 5 members on the Barren. The question is, should Broken Blade stay bot lane and then Bjergsen just use his ult early and have Sejuani show in order to get C9 off the Barren? Because Broken Blade has a lot of items and a lot of ability to split push down an inhibitor. Now, the first question you always ask is, inhibitor for Barren, is it worth it? And it always changes depending on comps. The problem that TSM have is that if they get bot lane inhibitor and give over Barren, the Barren buff power play from C9 buys them a lot of gold because they have so few objectives on the map. They have no outer turrets yet. So even just C9 getting all the easy objectives, let's say 4 turrets and some minions and some time, inevitably gets them closer and closer to TSM not being able to team fight. So this is one of those times where I think usually bot lane inhibitor for Barren in a scenario where you only have 3 members is like just a straight up win for the team that gets the inhibitor, because you're like, wow, you had nothing and you got an inhibitor. That's pretty sick. But in this scenario where any extension of the game through a Barren is super, super heavy, it's harder to calculate. So I don't hate the TP down instead of finishing things off. But if the TP is going to come in, like Bjergsen gets in super aggressive to brawl with Sneaky. To me, this is inexperience with Rumble, because he comes in at 50%, over 50% heat, and he doesn't lead with Equalizer until he overheats. So he doesn't actually get to Equalizer. This is like, if you're just going to contest for Barren, you Equalizer in a line. To be clear, you Equalizer in a line here, so you're burning anyone that's finishing Barren, and also people coming to you. And then you just randomly all in here and try to kill Sneaky and also get people off Barren. And if you just wanted to have Broken Blade split push, I think that play is categorically correct. This seems more like I want to battle, burst Sneaky, and also be able to turn and hold Equalizer. So it feels like he's doing a lot of things after Broken Blade comes in, and then the overheat really screws him here. So I think that's actually a mistake on execution when it comes to the overheat. Yes, he overheats with Flame Spitter up. So at least he has the big damage Flame Spitter. He thinks the Ignite will get the kill, but there's no exit strategy here if there's a turn. So I think just given all of the variables, you always start Equalizer there because your Equalizer doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to get people off Barren. And then the rest of it is just obviously no damage people getting killed slowly. They get C9 off the Barren, but it's a lot of gold granted here. Like the gold gap from the start of the play is 7,100. And they get it down to 5,700. So they get back 1,400 gold. They reset the game. They reset their minion waves. They'll get access to top minion and bot lane minion wave that before wasn't possible without the pick here. So, yeah, big shout out. C9 make a super decisive call, even with Sneaky being low. Like, Sneaky's the real hero here, because how many AD carries just give up on this play, and then suddenly Aatrox and Vladimir are just stuck super deep behind enemy lines? Like, Sneaky had to commit as much as he did in order to make this play even remotely viable. And while he dies, like, it really doesn't matter with how much they're able to get. And we're close to the items starting to move away. So the moment that any other tank item is done here, the moment that more threat is here in terms of a death cap, third item on Sivir. Sivir is a soft counter to Rumble. As a Rumble player, I know this. Because at the end of the day, Sivir ult, especially the game goes on, is enough of a burst of movement speed that there's no reason for you to stay in the Equalizer. Like, unless you are rooted by the Varus or stunned by the Sejuani, the moment Sivir pops ult, you're disengaging in one way or the other. And tank items also against flat pen. So there's a Negatron cloak in this item. The magic resist starts to be piled together. The Equalizer that did insane damage a moment ago is about to drop off a cliff in terms of teamfight damage. And the Sivir is a big reason that you're going to get like 1 or 2 ticks of Equalizer that before was getting you 4 or 5. So we're at the pendulum here. The pendulum's about to swing to C9 really hard in terms of team fights unless TSM can make something happen really soon. Around Broken Blade is the easiest way to go because he already has the control wards laid down. Flash down, flash down, flash down, flash down, flash down against the Teamfight comp. When does this play start? Watching the minimap here, so Jarvan and Vlad are together. They're on the duty here. They're spotted on wards going for this flank, but TSM's a little bit slow to react. I have to abate this one. So it only gets the chunk out. It doesn't actually get any kills. I like the angle they took, but they weren't able to capitalize on enough C9 in order to make this happen. Still good communication from the players to communicate those TPs and things like that there. It just wasn't realistically able for 2 people to do damage at the same time. See how desperate it is from TSM, really trying to force here, but they don't have ults. They wanted to keep in combat until Sven got his Chains of Corruption back off, but they're still on cooldown. TSM's Barren turn is actually not as strong as it. So Barren turn for TSM is very strong usually because Equalizer, Chains of Corruption, Sejuani ult. Notice neither of those cooldowns are up. So actually their turn here is pretty awkward. And we know that their Barren rush, even with double Infernal Mountain, is not outstanding. So there's no way they can rush this down super fast. So Sneaky was far away. Where was he revealed? He was revealed on minions here. He continues to clear and TSM start. A normal AD carry comp takes the Barren. Not yet, but they'd be a lot closer, right? But Broken Blade's peeling off. TSM's playing as if they want to peel without the ults they need to peel. $45,000 gold, so that we know already that their damage number is going to be way higher here. So here is what the biggest call of the game happens. TSM see Sneaky and Kumo wave clearing together and say, let's go to Barren. We need to make it happen now. They're going to outscale us. Let's start up the Barren. But they try to do too many things at once. You cannot play Barren turn game, which is what this comp is about. They don't rush Barren. They don't have enough Barren damage to do so easily. Yes, Jace, Rumble, Varus, decent, but it being not on here, Varus, and Broken Blade being the one that you'll notice playing goaltender rather than hitting it, without these two being full damage to Barren, they're never going to finish the Barren here. But they also can't turn because they don't have their turn abilities. You cannot make... Without Equalizer, Rumble's a melee champion tanking Barren with no threat when he has to turn. Like, he's just going to die in the front line. He doesn't build any defensive stats to be a frontliner. He needs Equalizer to threaten the roam. But the moment this is happening, Broken Blade not hitting it from about 8,000 Barren health, they're always turning. But we know they're always turning without ults. C9 probably don't have those exact timers. They assume that things are going to be available, right? That's what they have to assume here, is that things are going to be available in order for the turn. But they're not playing to their ults. Like, they've gone too fast. They've tried to overforce something as a comp that's about zone control and sieges. And then they get out team fought with 45,000 gold, C9 running them down. And now the pendulum has swung all the way back. Like, this is the moment where there's absolutely no way for TSM to contest objectives if C9 control the map. And they can be a lot more comfortable about making that happen at these item turns. So this is a really big turning point in the game. This was kind of the last roll of the dice for TSM. They need the Barren here. But the moment that their ults aren't up, like... Sadly, the first initial Rumble plays during the laning phase, the roam timings, they were great. That was quintessential Bjergsen. But the mid to late game, ever since the Rift Herald was stuffed in the mid lane, the Rumble plays, and in general, TSM have been too overforcing things when their resources aren't available. And you can't do that when you're this out-comp teamfight-wise. Oh, that was really nice. C9 love flanks, man. Kumo from the side, like he's doing his licorice thing. There goes so deep. C9's like, we can win fights, but you don't need to go under turrets to do that. There's no objective there. The cathartic moment when you are coming from behind and trying to make big plays like this. Good call from Azael. You know, he's talking about how C9's trying to push them. C9 have been super decisive because you can't give TSM setup time in order to get their sieging done before a fight starts. And that's what's not happened here. And just look at the map. The map here tells you who's winning. Control ward line all through the river. No wards on this flank. No wards on that flank. TSM are cutting corners because they have a comp that needs to set up around vision because they've pushed in so many turrets. 5 out of the 6 turrets outside their base. And before, when they had inherent pressure of, oh shit, Jace walked in my lane, I need to leave. Oh damn, this Rumble's roaming first, I need to leave my lane. Wow, lethality Varus 2v2, I need to be on the back foot. The lack of vision doesn't matter. But in a scenario like this, where C9 has engaged champions walking from every potential flank, like TSM only now has wards on both flanks, and they desperately need those. So the game texture has changed so significantly with the last couple of fights going the way of C9 that now you're like, is there any way for TSM to make a play here? Like, it almost needs a mistake. Zazel has the Mikhails, so he's got Devour just like Tom Kench does in some ways. That they can walk up and contest vision here really easily on the side of C9. Mikhails. Nothing you can do. Let's watch the replay of this. What is the vision scenario that leads to all this happening? Control ward. Right side flank they can't respect. And control ward. They don't know where Ryze is. They don't know where Jarvan is. They assume Jarvan's perhaps on Ocean Drake. And then Bjergsen just says, let's go. Do notice they're using they're using Equalizer to initiate when Sven is really far away. Max channeled arrow is about here, for context. So this fight is always going to be fought around here. Sven is not going to be able to do damage to that. They can't respect their right side. Flash down, flash down, flash down. Their threats can't walk up to do damage because they don't know where Vladimir and Jarvan are. It's only ever going to go one way with that sort of a disadvantage in terms of a team fight like this. It's a nice cleanup, though. That's desperation for you. Like, the only way you make a fight like that is super desperation. But they went for the all-in, didn't respect Mikhail's Crucible on Zeyzal and the turnaround that can happen there, and end up getting flanked with their flashes down. I assume they just lose the game here. Oh, okay. We're going longer. They didn't have a big enough minion wave. Big re-engage. And then Teamfight comp gonna do Teamfight comp things. It's an A. They don't end fast that often, to be honest. I mean, this time it was a little bit hard for them to finish, so I understand it. Still in a gold disadvantage. They're going to have their first gold lead very shortly. Yeah, from behind, Lethality Varus doesn't do anything because he can't actually overextend to poke out members under turrets. Rumble does nothing because he doesn't have enough scaling in the late game. Like, you need like a Death Cap Void Staff to make this work. And he doesn't have those. Jace needs no introduction. They can't play side lanes because they don't have any map control, so it's just on C9 to close this out as they want. Huh. We found a way to make a mistake. How did that hit? Damn. That's a hard ult to hit. What a shout out to Arcadian. Oops. Went too far back. Where are we at? I was so surprised by that. Oh. That's a nice angle ulti from Arcadian here. That angle there, very difficult to hit. But why is Aatrox going back into the mid lane, Niski obliging there, and two people invading red buff where they don't know where the enemy are? Like, you see the question mark pings here. They're thinking they're out of vision, but they don't have the vision to make this walk-up play. That was really poor from C9. Really weird. Really poor. Yeah, TSM have to start the Barren here. They don't have another choice. Far over the wall? Aww. Tom Kench got just dunked there. Oh, Kumo. Yeah, fear those minions. Nailed it. Good victory from C9. Hard game for them. Let's watch the turn for the Baron. I want to watch Kumo on this Baron. You have to all in the Baron here as TSM. Like, you're never going to have enough map control to make this play again, so you have to do what you have to do. Sven sees Vlad topside, moves to the bottom end here to try to poke. They have no vision on Kumo till too late. And then, yeah. On here, Varus can't kite and orb walk the way that normal Varus does because he doesn't have any attack speed. So Kumo gets that one easily. Auto attack over the wall kills Broken Blade. Wow. The W here is like so god tier because he actually slows and interrupts Tom Kench multiple different ways. Smoothie for sure would have been super tilted by that one. And it ends up being the win. Like, what can you do as Arcadian, right? The game's over here. Well played by Kumo. He thought that one out really well. Even fearing the minions there is pretty important, so he doesn't take as much minion aggro. Really interesting game between C9 and TSM, because it's such a game of two halves. Like, TSM played out the first 20 minutes really, really well. You know, I gave it S- because of a really bad Rift Herald misuse in the mid lane that cost them a lot. Like, the game would have been so different if they had got that Rift Herald down, because you have to adjust the timeline by like 2 minutes to 4 minutes earlier on Outer Ring going down, on being able to play around super strong lethality stackers and magic pen stackers. Like, this game was the epitome of early game versus late, because it's early game priority lanes that stack penetration. You know, like flat pen stacking is something that you don't see in 3 lanes to as much by any means. So it's cool that that we got kind of like a divide there, but it always meant there was a chance for C9 to come back. And people will say, they always could have outscaled, but I actually think outscaling is ultra hard in the meta as it is now, because there's so much gold. You're getting an extra 1,000 gold, an extra 400 gold, it feels like these days, because of turret plates. So it just felt like a game where TSM did everything right until it really started to fall away. Like, if you look at how it went from all the roams from Bjergsen being outstanding and always on the front foot. I love the build, going Boots 2 and also the Blasting Wand in order to push and roam, because obviously flat AP does a lot more damage to minions and monsters than going for a Oblivion Orb, you know, Magic Pen. They executed those really, really well. They used the early equalizers smartly to cut off exits, but also zone people away from turrets. But in the mid game, when they tried to take the inner turret on the top side, and then Jarvan was engaging while Bjergsen was trying to ult people off a minion wave, that was the first real disconnect. And that unfortunately fell into a couple of their future plays. And then it felt like TSM was playing with time pressure. It almost felt like TSM was doing a multiple choice exam, and they had paced themselves really well, and they were putting in good answers. They weren't second guessing themselves. But then they heard the call, like after 20 minutes, potentially after being a bit annoyed by the Rift Herald mistake. And the call was, 5 minutes left, because it was, 20 to 25 minutes where they have to win the game. And they got rushed. They made some very rushed decisions. First around the sieging ult that we mentioned a couple of times. Then around the Barrens, they started without their Sejuani and Rumble ults in order to turn. Like, you could really see the time pressure get to TSM. They made a lot of moves that, if it was in a different game where both teams had equal scaling, you'd be like, TSM, why'd you throw running at the Barren when you could have just waited longer? Like, I kind of felt that about TL last week, where I was like, TL, like, why are we fighting? You can wait longer. TSM today, they did need to make those plays, but they didn't do it with the right amount of polish and the right amount of full insight of kind of their strengths and when to pull the trigger. They knew when in terms of item spikes, but not in terms of like waiting for cooldowns and having a cool head in what is obviously a big rivalry match. So TSM did a lot right here. So I don't know how they walk away from this game. Like, I'd love to hear from kind of TSM side, because they walked away from the Gragas Yasuo versus Yuumi bot lane saying, we like our idea, it was the execution. I thought the execution overall here was really good from TSM until it really wasn't. And so it kind of falls into that same sort of mind space, and you wonder if you can just say that twice, because you say that 3, 4, 5 times in a best of one double round robin season, and you lose all those games, right? So C9 for their side, they tried something different. We were speculating a bit on Kumo and what to make of him. And people were talking about how he got a lot of jungle attention. I think here he had jungle proximity, but he was just on the receiving end. Like, if we go all the way back to laning phase, let's find out how much CS he is behind, during laning phase. 15. He's down 10 CS. So Kumo actually did a pretty good job here with the counter ganks that came through. And CS-wise, the only kind of big lead was Rumble, who was pushing and roaming. So Bjergsen was kind of the sum of the difference between the two teams and allowing other people to get kills. But I think Kumo in general asserted himself pretty well on a tough matchup. So I actually give him passing colors on playing the kind of receiving end of the matchup compared to Jace, which is the more aggressive side of the matchup. And his TP play, right? His TP play around this area was really strong. And I don't have clear comms on who called that, but they followed up decisively. They made strong plays. And we end up in a position here where at the end of the day, you have to feel pretty good about how C9 rebounded. Now, when it comes to the idea of trying to scale out that hard against TSM's comp, I'll go back to my original analysis and say, I specifically believe that in this meta, TSM's draft is better because you should be able to close out games with that much of a gold lead, that they had 6 to 7K, and scaling is so hard. We call it the S word, the dirty S word on the LCK broadcast for a reason, because so often you get dunked out of games when you try to scale. But in this case, C9 made some good decisive calls when they needed to. They, they were more decisive than I expected at 22 minutes. They actually really hard pulled trigger. They used information really well. So the information flow of Bjergsen's top lane with Ignite, no TP. We're going to roam forward. I'm going in. Doesn't matter that Civ is chunked out. Let's go for the all-in and that mid-game play. Bought them a lot of time. Like, it bought them a lot of favor from me. But if you ask me, hey Papa, like, who had the better draft, I'll take the TSM side, because C9 needed certain fortunate mistakes to go the way of their team, and then things fell into place rather than they could just control things and make counterpunches. Those counterpunches were when they were already 5, 6K gold down. And you make a counterpunch attempt 6, 7K gold down from mostly turret plates in early game, and you get it wrong, you just straight up lose the game. So that's why, personally, I rate the TSM side, but the execution let them down in kind of surprising ways after the TSM execution was way better than expected at the start. So that's going to be my first VOD review of the night, TSM versus C9. I think Both teams have a lot of things to walk away from, like another performance that Kumo can feel proud of. TSM with another phase of the game that would make a good VOD review, and then another phase of the game that needs a lot of work. Which TSM comes out next week, I think, is something I'm not clear on. Do you try to recreate these early game drafts? Do you give up and try scaling? I don't know if TSM even have the answer to that, but it's going to be a very interesting thing for things to track on with. So I'm going to take a short break, eat a quick amount of dinner, another salad, and come back with the second VOD review. We're going to the LCK. It's a Thunder Bear game. It's support Volibear from Gen G against Griffin, game number 1, after the break. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.